Hi, I'm John Oda, Director of Finance here at Zenatta Consulting. This is a tutorial on how to categorize transactions on your bank feed and reconciling your bank account. If you find this video useful, please consider liking and subscribing below. Thank you and enjoy. Starting off here, we're going to go to the banking section. Once there, we'll need to pick the bank account that you're working in. I've created a sample one here on our demo account called the Bank of Money Checking. As you can see, once the bank feed has been established, you'll see that there are uncategorized transactions to work on. So we'll click here on the uncategorized transactions. And once we're in here, we'll be able to see a bunch of different transactions that have not been categorized yet. So I'm going to just kind of quickly go through each of these and give a little bit of an example here. So starting off, we see that there's deposit here on 3/3 for $500. If we click that, we have previously recorded a customer payment for $500 on 3/1. So if this matches that, we can come in here and just simply click match, or we can categorize that manually. I'm going to go ahead and match this one here, and I'll go into detail why in the next few here. After that, we have an online banking transfer. I have previously gone ahead and created the transfer from the second bank account. So if we are here, we'll see that there's simply a transfer funds of $5,000 that's coming from the Bank of Money savings account. If this is true and it matches, as you can see, it's on the same date of 3/8, we can go ahead and match this as well. If we were needing to categorize this manually, we could simply come over to here, and then we would go and transfer from another account, select the account as the Bank of Money Savings, and we can do that from this account as well. But since I've already done it in the other account, we simply need to match that transaction. Coming up next, we have a payment of $740. For this one, you'll see that there's no matches here. And the reason is when I went ahead and made this transaction, I recorded the payment. If we come down to sales, and then payments received, we'll go ahead and open that in a new screen. And you'll see that there's a payment for $740 here. You'll notice that it says check. This is important. So usually with a check, you'll receive the check, you'll make the payment, and then once you go to deposit that, you may not see the money hit your bank account for a couple days. So one of the things that I suggest doing is to go ahead and take the check, and when you record the check, you have it deposit to the undeposited funds rather than the bank account that you're depositing into. The reason being for this is, say you have multiple payments that are going to be all deposited together. This way, what you'll see is that everything comes into the undeposited funds onto your balance sheet. And once that transaction hits the bank account, then you'll be able to transfer everything from the undeposited funds into your bank account. So let's go back here. We're going to categorize this manually as a transfer from another account, and we'll go ahead and select undeposited funds. And so when we do that, you do not have to make a rule for that, but when you do that, what you'll see is, let's go back here, go ahead and go to the balance sheet. So what you'll see here in the balance sheet is the undeposited funds account. And so we'll see that the customer payment was made, and then later on the 8th, when the transfer actually happened, you'll see that that money came out. So you should have a running balance of 0 or next to 0, depending on how many checks you receive a day. Going back to here, the next one would be this one here. So we saw that there's an invoice open now. So when we match this to an invoice, what will happen is that it will mark the invoice as paid. Come back here to invoices, you'll see that the test invoice here for $50 has been marked paid. And if we come down to payments received, we'll see that the payment has been made now. We didn't have to create it, and then it'll show that it's a deposit coming from the bank account. The last kind of thing you can do with deposits is, say you made a sale, you didn't have an invoice ready. So what we can do there is go ahead and click on this. We can create a sales without invoice. When you do that, you'll need to select which income account you want to have that go to. So I'm going to go ahead and select sales here. If you want to then tie that to a certain customer, you can go ahead and add that to, I'm going to add that to our test customer. This could be received via whatever. I'm going to just continue to use cash here, and we'll go ahead and save that. You do not need to make a rule. This is just going to pop up every time on the transaction that you have not created a rule for. So moving forward, I'm going into some other types of deposits here. This one here, online banking transfer. Say you as a company owner need to do a cash infusion into your business. That instead of being a deposit, we would go ahead and create a owner's contribution. Or if you would like, you can also do this as a shareholder loan if you have a S Corp or C Corp. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to add this into the owner's equity here. This is going to be cash infusion, and it's going to go ahead and be deposited there. One other type of cash deposit you may receive is a retainer invoice. So I've created a retainer invoice here for $1,000. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can record, say if this was a check, the same with a regular invoice, you can record the payment, or you can match this directly to the retainer invoice, therefore creating a payment on the payment received side as well. These things work very similar as well on the expense side. On the expense side, we can also do a lot of the same things with the matching as well as the creation of the expense bill or bill payment all together here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on one of these here. As you can see, I've already created a rule for this. So knowing that it's a rule, it's going to automatically give you an option for the categorize manually. If I go over to the match transactions, it's not seeing anything because, this is a kind of typical expense that you may just see on your bank account. So we're going to go ahead and we can either save that here, or once you have some transactions that have rules created, we can come over here to the uncategorized transaction side, go ahead and review the recognized transactions. I always suggest to look through these. You can have up to 50 at a time that you can categorize together. So we'll just want to kind of go through here and make sure that these ones are matching what we've seen before. So I see this paper statement fee. I know that's a bank fee that my bank is charging me, and I can look and see that. I have a couple of ones for utility. California American Water is the water bill. We have SoCal Gas, that's a gas bill. So we can go ahead and checkbox this and categorize now. This will categorize all of these at the same time for you. And as I mentioned before, you can do up to 50 at a time. So one of the suggestions I have is at the bottom here, you can set it to review 50 transactions at a time. By doing that, you can go through them, collect the box, and hit categorize now without seeing any type of nasty error message from Zoho here. So I'm going to go ahead and categorize this now. And as I've mentioned now a couple times, creating rules for this. On this next one here, I'm going to go ahead and click on this SoCal Edison bill. I know that this is going to be my utilities. Oops. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up, and I'm going to do a vendor. So I'm going to add a new vendor. Company name is SoCal Edison. That could be the display name. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I don't really need a vendor email or phone number potentially for them since they're not a true vendor where I'm purchasing things from them, but I do want to keep track of maybe how much I'm spending on my electrical, just to kind of give it a separation out from the general utility. I can do this also by creating a new chart of accounts for electric, but I don't want to do that. So to make it easier to create some reports, I'm going to go ahead and name this company name. And then now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and save. I want to create some rules, and so that moving forward, it's going to recognize these types of transactions. I know that my utilities are not always going to be the same amount every month, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove this criterion. By doing so, it's going to look for all amounts for this type of description. And in here, I usually as well will make sure that there's nothing in here that's going to make it where it will only pick up small amounts of things. So now that this I've seen, so because I also see SoCal Edison CO, so maybe I just want to make sure that this says CO and get rid of the bill payment here. That way it'll pick up all types of the SoCal Edison expenses. So I'm going to go ahead and make this rule here. Now when I go back to recognized, you'll see that it picked up the SoCal Edison direct pay, as well as potentially what the other one was just SoCal payment. I'm going to go ahead again and categorize these. Next up, we have some checks here that have gone out. So if we look here, I can see that there was a vendor payment made for $150 on 6/1. Maybe it took a little bit for them to go ahead and cash your check. So that's why you'll see here that this may be a much later date than that. So like the deposits, we can match to a vendor payment. We can match to a bill, which we can see here. We have a bill for $500. This is bill 55555. I'm going to go ahead and match this one as well. Or what we can do is go ahead and create either an expense or a vendor payment. Maybe we did a deposit with a vendor. We did not receive an invoice yet, but we knew we had to pay $300 up front. So we can go ahead and say that this is going to be a vendor payment. We can select our vendor and go ahead and say this was a check. Reference number is going to be 504. We might put in the description, a down payment for inventory items. By saving this, we'll see that this is going to be a excess amount that's currently not linked to any payments, but we know that, hey, we can later apply this to our vendors. Once we've chosen a vendor, you can see that you may have any bills that are on here already. So we can apply it towards these bills that are currently open, or we can just simply save it as an excess payment. Maybe it's a bill that has not come up yet. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as an excess payment and continue to save. I'm going to go ahead and finish these last few and we'll move on to reconciling your bank account. Okay, now that all of my transactions have been categorized, I can move on to reconciling my bank account. So to do that, we'll need to go to the gear icon in the top right here, and we will go to reconcile account. Since this is a brand new account, we're going to be kind of starting from zero. One of the things you'll need is a bank statement. For now, since I had to create this, I only have a, let's see here, Excel file here. On this Excel file, this kind of looks like what the CVS export is, but we'll see that the bank names here, the bank routing numbers here, or the account numbers here. We went ahead and we have a 0 starting balance for this, and we have our ending balance. This one is for 1/1 to 7/17/2022, but we'll just be breaking this down by month to kind of go through what a typical monthly bank statement will be like. So we'll be starting at March 1st. We know that the starting balance is 0, and as we go through to the end of the month, the ending balance will be $6,437.40. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the other part of my screen while we go through the Zoho side. By selecting Reconcile Now, we will start our first reconciliation. So as I mentioned before, we know we are working from March 1st to March 31st of 2022. Our closing balance is going to be the 6437.40. So we'll go ahead and we'll start this reconciliation. As you can see here, when we select this, it's going to pick up any transactions that happened within that time period. So we can see from 3/3 all the way down to 3/31. If you've done your reconciliation correctly, you should be able to select everything and you'll see that there is no difference. We've started at the beginning amount and we've cleared everything at that point. This will not always be the case. If you wrote a check on the 31st and someone does not cash that until the next month, then of course you won't see that on your bank rec. This is pretty typical. Or if you have some cash that you received on the 31st and you didn't deposit it until the 1st or 2nd, then of course you won't see that on here. So typically what I'll do for this, like I said, you can do a quick check, hit select all, see if that amount ties to what you're showing here. If it does, you can go ahead and reconcile. Say you were off by some amount, we can always save and reconcile later. So I'm going to go ahead and reconcile this first month. Once the first month has been reconciled, it's going to lock all of these transactions. So if we go back into the account and look at the transactions, you'll see that it's been matched for some of them, just categorized for others. But the main thing you need to look for is this reconciled. So when it's got this checkbox with a circle here, that means it's been reconciled and those transactions are kind of locked into place. So if you needed to make any changes, say instead of one, you accidentally added something that wasn't supposed to be there, or if there was a duplicate, you'll need to look and see why there was a duplicate, and you may need to go back and undo that bank reconciliation. So I'm going to go back ahead and go into the reconcile, and I'm going to start the next month's reconciliation. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bring in my bank statement here. I know that all of these are fine. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to, let's see here, April. I know that the ending balance is now going to be 5837.85. So doing that, I'm going to come back into here, start my next reconciliation. I know that it's going to be from April to the end of April. It's already going to pull in the starting date for you. It's going to be grayed out because it's going to be locked. You can change the end date. Say if this one we're doing 2022, say we want to do, 2 months at a time, we can actually do that here. Let's do that instead here. So we're going to switch this to 5/31/2022. I'm going to bring this back over here. I see that at the end of May here, the ending balance is 7992.26. So we're going to go ahead and put that in here. 992.26. And we'll start the reconciliation. I'm going to go ahead and, like I mentioned before, hit the select all. And if I look into here, we'll notice that there is a difference of $1,600 currently. So that's strange. What's happening? We'll need to look into that a little bit more. So one of the things we'll do is we will pull the bank reconciliation side by side, and we'll go through and we'll look and we'll clear out these different transactions as we see them on the bank statement here. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing I see on here is a expense for $74. So I'm going to uncheck everything. I'm going to check the $74. See here if I can add. Since I found the $74 there, I will mark on here that I also found $74. Moving back, I see a $1,000 deposit. And looks like we have two different $1,000 deposits here. We have a general income sales without invoices and a customer payment that came in for $1,000. So I know that this one here, we categorized it correctly. So maybe we, had this one go to the wrong account. If you ever find any errors in here, when you go to explore that, you can go ahead and hit save and reconcile later. That will kind of take a snapshot of what you've been working on here, and we can go explore. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and reconcile later. We will go back to the bank account here. We will look at this all transactions. So if we come through here, we see everything's added and categorized. When we come down here, we see, this was manually added. Okay, and this one's been categorized already. So manually added means that it's come through either a person or through one of your integrations. So if you have an integration with Stripe or Authorize.net or Square, a lot of the times you'll see this manually added transaction here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So if we come over to here, we can see the invoice that it's attached to. I'm going to go ahead and open that in a new tab. And when I come to here, I see that there's been a payment received on 4/1 that was manually created for cash. So if I go ahead and open this, it looks like what happened was that they may have deposited it to the wrong account. So if this is a cash payment and went into our petty cash drawer, maybe we need to just have this go into our petty cash drawer rather than into our bank account because we haven't made that deposit of the petty cash back into the bank account. So pretty simple. As long as you have not reconciled that, we can go ahead and come in here, switch the account that was deposited to, and save. Another situation that may have occurred was that this payment here, actually one of those sales without invoices that we saw when we were here. So maybe this transaction was actually supposed to go along with this. If something's already categorized, what we can do, I'm going to go ahead and delete the manually added payment because I now know that we need to associate this with our invoice that we had for that client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into here. If we've categorized as sales without invoices already, we won't be able to edit and change that. So what we'll need to do is to uncategorize this transaction. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and that manual transaction we are going to delete. So we'll come over to here to the payment and go ahead and delete this payment. Once that payment's been deleted, it'll take it out of the system, and we can go ahead and come back to the uncategorized selection here, click on this. Hey, I see that there's an invoice on 4/1 for $1,000. This is a deposit of $1,000. We can go ahead and match that. Now that I know that this is fixed, we can come back into our reconciliation, click on the in-process reconciliation, and start back into here again. So I'm going to go ahead and go through these different transactions. I know we just reconciled this one, and checkbox the ones that I know are working. As you can see, we're still off by $600. What I've gone ahead and done was create a situation where we did not categorize something to show you why we could be off like this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and reconcile later. If we go back into the bank transactions here, as you can see, I have a transaction that's within the date range. Because this had cleared on the bank statement and we had not categorized this, that is why that was not showing up. So I'm going to go ahead and categorize this really quickly as an expense. I'm going to go ahead and move this to our insurance expense or janitorial. And we'll save that. Going back again into our bank account and our reconciliation. This is something where you may have to come in and out of it. That's why they make that save progress. It is important to kind of see what's going on. And this is a great tool to see if you have any duplicate transactions like we saw before, or if you've missed something. We're going to go ahead and go back in here. We'll checkbox the new expense that is in here, and we should be cleared. So very simple. As I mentioned, we can use this tool to make sure that everything has been cleared out. Once those have been reconciled, you can click on them. And if you wanted to, you can view the reconciliation status here. You do that, it'll show you everything that you've cleared. If there are any unreconciled transactions, it'll show here at the top. One of the things I suggest doing, which is good practice that I learned when I worked in a CPA firm, is to take the bank statement with all of your cleared transactions you've checkboxed, and we usually would save this along with the bank reconciliation. So we could export this PDF. There's a couple different transaction types here. I like to see all of them, just as someone who is in my financials a lot. You just want to see kind of the high level. You can do the summary. And then what you can do once you've exported those is you can then attach them to the reconciliation as well. When we come back to that main bank reconciliation page, we can go ahead and attach the documents so that they'll have them, as well as the bank statement is what I suggest leaving in there, so that someone can come in there and if they ever wanted to know why you reconciled the things that you did or compare that to the bank statement, those will be inside of Zoho for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave those in the comments below.